Okay, it is now 10:45, and without further ado, we're going to be turning things over to Kevin Holman. And Kevin will be presenting on VSAE Made Easy with Fragments. Kevin, I'm going to make you the presenter. I'll stay on, make sure your audio is good, make sure you have no trouble sharing out your screen, and then I'll mute myself. So you are officially the presenter, and I can now see your screen.
All right, good morning.
And your audio is good. Good morning, Kevin. Thank you very much for joining us. Over to you.
Okay. So my name is Kevin Holman, and as you said, I'm a PFE for Microsoft, and I've been working with SCOM for quite a long time. And what I'm going to talk about today is going to be using Visual Studio for fragment authoring. So the point of this is to kind of show that a lot of customers haven't really taken the dive into Visual Studio authoring yet. It is a lot more complex. It's a lot more powerful. There's a lot of things you can do, especially like I saw some of the comments earlier about making composite data sources. There's a lot of things you can do in Visual Studio that are really hard to do in wizard-driven tools, especially if you're doing deep custom monitoring. So I'm not going to focus on deep custom monitoring. I'm kind of the purpose of this is to show a bridge or a way that people can start using Visual Studio in conjunction with the other tools that are out there that make monitoring a little bit easier. And so for the purposes of this, I'm going to demo something called fragments. And fragments are basically just pieces of XML or management packs that you would grab and reuse if it's something that you're going to do on a regular basis. So for instance, kind of if you want to discover the existence of an application and monitor a service, or look in the event log for an event and generate an alert, those are things that there are lots of tools out there to be able to create that type of monitoring. This is just going to demonstrate another method that is available to you. And I have a lot of my customers that use this methodology, especially when they want to repeat very, very common requests really quickly. So I'm not going to show a lot of slides and talk about this. This is pretty much the only slide I got. So I'm just going to kind of do like a demo application where I'm going to use these management pack fragments and demo how we would use a fragment library that I've created, and I've shared it out on the TechNet gallery so that you can go grab that and download them, and then use the example fragments that I have to do all these things that we're talking about. So I have a bogus company called Fabricam that Microsoft loves to use, and for this demo, their goals are, hey, I want to discover an application, I want to monitor the service for that app, I want to look for any events that the application might generate and turn those into alerts. And then we want to look at performance both from a collection and a threshold perspective. I want to create some views so I can expose some visualizations around that app to the app owner. And let's create some groups for the purposes of limiting monitoring or doing overrides in the future, or maybe scoping notifications. So those are our goals. That's what I want to do, and we're just going to kind of walk through this fragment library to be able to do that. So I'm going to switch over to my management group, and the first thing we'll do is fire up Visual Studio. Now, Visual Studio obviously is a Microsoft software package that you guys can download and install. And then there's an add-on called Visual Studio Authoring Extensions that we're going to be using today. And that's a free download. You can go grab that from the download site. And I'm going to include the resources for all of this in this deck as well, and the links for where you can go grab all this. So I'm not going to demonstrate how to install Visual Studio or how to install the authoring extensions. That's really straightforward, but I do have a blog series on it. So if you want to reference that and kind of follow along later, that should help you from a step-by-step perspective. So I'm going to start with creating a new project in Visual Studio. And I want to choose a management type project, and I can pick, what's the targeted version of SCOM that I'm writing this for. We support up to SCOM 2016 now. I'm going to keep my management packs at the 2012 R2 level, and I need to give this a name, so I'm just going to call this fab.printapp. And so the application that I'm going to use for a demo is just going to be the print service. So for instance, like if we wanted to monitor a print server. But it's really agnostic as far as what the application is. So one of the first things that I see customers use is they write a management pack in-house to monitor their antivirus software. It's something that runs on every server. It generally has a service and some events and maybe some script-based monitoring to look at signature file versions and things like that. So that's a real common scenario. I'm just going to do the print service because that's really easy to demo, and it has kind of all these components to do the demo with. So I'm going to go ahead and start that project, and it's going to set up a project on disk wherever I told it to save. And so this project is where I'll go if I want to make changes or add things as time goes on. So it's kind of a one-way scenario where I develop here in Visual Studio and then I push it into the management group. So when I start off over here on Solution Explorer, I've got my print app and the basic references that just get added to every management pack when you just create a simple management pack. So the first goal that we had was to discover an application. So I'm going to start, and I want to keep my my Visual Studio project organized. So one of the ways we'll do that is create subfolders to put all of our different workflows. So I'm going to start by right-clicking my application and choosing Add and a folder, and we'll just call this Classes. And within the classes, I'm just going to right-click and I'm going to say Add an existing item. So one of the prerequisites to this is you'll need to go download my fragment library, and that's available on the TechNet Gallery. I'll share the URL here in a minute. But essentially, one of the problems, fragments are not new. A lot of people have been talking about fragments and the value of fragments for a long time. One of the problems with most of the people talking about that is they didn't really offer an example set of fragments, or a fragment library, I call it, for people to use. And so, and I think that kept a lot of people from using Visual Studio and using fragments, because if you had to go create all your own fragments from scratch, which you do, then that is very time consuming, and if you're not that familiar with XML, it kind of kept people from starting. So what I did is I created this list of all these different fragments that do the most common scenarios, and I'm constantly adding to this based on customer feedback and customer requests. So they're available for you to download. So I have things like, look for a registry key that exists, look for run a PowerShell script that queries the registry, look for a registry value that whether it exists or not, use an expression for the registry. So I've got things for like SNMP devices, and so on and so forth. And I'll constantly add these as customers, give me feedback or ask for new requests. So I'm going to do the registry key exists fragment, and I try to name them to where they're fairly self-explanatory as well. And so here it is in this list, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rename it, and we're just going to call this the fab print app class. And this doesn't actually change anything in the XML. I'm just doing this to keep it nice and organized. So this opens up the fragment, as you can see over here, and if you're not used to looking at XML, it's kind of ugly. The point of this is to show you don't have to know XML at all in order to use these fragments. So what I've done is I've created some notes here at the top that explain what this fragment does and how you can use it. And basically, I've created a set of tags that are important. These are things that need to be changed in the management pack. And what we're going to do is simple find and replace. So I've already created a structure for classes and monitors and rules in these fragments. And what we're going to do is we're just going to do a simple find and replace. And this will help us build rich management packs that do a lot of monitoring. And what you're going to notice is it's really, really fast. And it's super useful if you're doing things that are very common, similar, and repeatable. You can build a fragment that's exactly structured like you want, and then just reuse that fragment over and over and over. So here's an example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this tag, the company ID tag, and I'm going to find it and replace it with the word fab. So that's my company ID, and just replace everything. And what you'll see is the XML is changing as I'm doing this, because everywhere that something needed to be changed, I've encapsulated it in these tags. So my app name, I'm going to find my app name, and I'm going to replace that with my app name. So I'm just going to call my app name print app. There we go. And the last thing I have to do for this class in discovery is my reg key. So I need to think about, well, how do I want to discover this application? So I'm just going to open up the registry. And in this case, I'm just going to drill into HKey local machine system. Now I can use any reg key that I want to discover, whatever's easiest for the app. If the app doesn't have a Hive under software, then I'll use something under system that for the service that exists. So if I go into HKey local machine system, current control set services, I'm just going to find my spooler service. Here it is. And I'm just going to copy this key name. And so back to here, I'm going to find this and replace that key with my key name and replace all. And there we go. Okay, so let's take a look at the XML that we've created. So we're done. I don't have any more encapsulated tags in the comments. And I can see this has a class definition of my fab print app class. Now, our find and replace is what created all of this. It's based on Windows local application. This includes a discovery. We targeted the Windows Server operating system class for our discovery. What I define what I'm actually discovering, what types. And in here I'm choosing a filtered registry discovery provider. So if you're not used to looking at this XML, it doesn't matter. You don't have to understand all of this. The only thing that I'm doing here that I need to clean up is I need to clean up this key. So you do have to kind of know the nomenclature, the syntax for what we're expecting as far as what is allowed as far as a key goes. And then I put some notes in here to help if you wanted to change things slightly within this pack. And basically once a day we're going to go out and discover who has this reg key. And if it exists, we're going to throw it into the class. So very, very simple. So I'm going to save this up here and go ahead and build it. And so when I'm building it in Visual Studio, that's just outputting it into an actual management pack. And it'll show me the status down here in the output field. And build one succeeded. Okay, so we're good. We can actually import this management pack right now and start discovering this. So let's do that. I'm going to kick over into SCOM. And under Management Packs, I'm going to import a management pack, add from disk, and I'm going to go into my development folder, and there's my print app, and drill down into the directory that Visual Studio writes these files, and here's my print app management pack. So everything looks good. Let's go ahead and do the import. That is complete. And so what's happening, as soon as I've imported this, I've built a class and a discovery, and it's going to go out and find all those servers. I don't have any views yet. I don't have any way to see what's happening behind the scenes. So one of the things we can do to check our progress in SCOM is to use discovered inventory. So within discovered inventory, I am going to change my target type. Clean this up. And I'm just going to search for fab. Yep, there is my print app class, and hit OK. And I don't have any instances yet. These are going to start slowly trickling in as all the agents are downloading that pack and running the discovery and sending up their discovery data. So instead of waiting for that to happen, we'll go ahead and continue on with the next step in the process. So the next thing I want to do is we're done with this print app class, so we can go ahead and close this fragment down, and we can always reopen it just by double-clicking it over here, and it'll come back up if I want to make changes. So I'm done with classes. I'll go ahead and collapse that, and then what I'll do is add. So the next thing I want to add is a monitor to monitor the service. So let's do an example of that. Let's create a new folder. We'll call this monitors. And within monitors, we're going to add an existing item again. And it's just going to go right into our folder that we last selected for our fragment library. And we're going to, here's generic monitors, and we'll find the monitor that meets what we're looking for. So I've got several of them: service, monitor service with no alert, just state changes, monitor service with alert. I've actually monitor service with a recovery. And then I went so far as to monitor a service with a recovery with a whole bunch of alert rules that will generate if the recovery fails or if something doesn't work as expected. So lots of different options here, and you can see you can take these and build on your own fragment library, especially if you customize things. If every time you monitor a service, you guys throw in a recovery, doing that over and over again with some of the existing tools, that can be very time-consuming. But if you customize things every time you deploy them, fragments are a way to make that really, really easy. So I'm just going to do a simple monitor a service with an alert. We're going to add that in. I'm going to rename it, and we're going to call this the Fab Print App Service Monitor. And that pops up, and you're going to see very common, repeatable things. So I've got my notes at the top. It shows these tags that have XML that I'm going to change throughout the rest of the code. So I'll start with company ID. I'll find that. Now, one of the cool things is, since I've already used a lot of these things in this project, they're going to keep here in my memory. So I know that my company ID is Fab, so then I can just come grab it from the drop-down, and you can get really fast with this. So I want to find app name. I know my app name is print app. Replace all of those. Now this is new, class ID. The way I've designed this is we're going to target all these workflows to a custom class that we've already created. So I need to go get that ID so I can replace this. So I'm going to expand classes over here on the right, and I'm going to open that back up, and here is my class ID. So I'm going to go grab that class ID and copy that and close that, and then back here I'm going to find class ID, and I'm going to replace it with my print app class, and that's just replacing it in the XML wherever it needs to be. And then lastly, I need to replace service name. So I'm going to find that. And I know my service name in this case is Spooler. So it'll be whatever shows up in the registry for whatever service that you're monitoring. This is the short name. That's what we're going to key off of. So I'll replace all of those, and we're done. So that's it. That's a whole service monitor with alerts, and it's updating the display strings. It's updating everything. We don't have to type a whole lot to do this. So here's the monitor, the Fab Print App Spooler monitor, and I'm basically looking whether it's running or not. You know, if it's running, it's healthy. If it's not running, it's error. Very, very simple and straightforward. You can see the service name got changed to Spooler. But even in the display strings, I also have where I use those tags, so it replaces those in the display strings for what's going to pop up. So when the alert gets generated, it's going to tell us, you know, a lot of detail about what's happening, and I'm using some parameter replacements to throw in, so I could make this generic, and they'll throw in things like the service name and the computer name. So I'm done here. I'm going to go ahead and save this and build it. And hopefully we don't get any errors. Build one succeeded. Okay, so we're good. So I'm going to kick back over to the console now, and I'm going to do a refresh. And look at this. We've already discovered several servers that have the print app running on them. So here they are. And so this is the discovery running behind the scenes, and notice it says not monitored. That's simply because we haven't added any monitors yet. So we just did the service monitor, so as soon as we import that management pack, that should change this to a state that's going to reflect that state. So I'm going to go ahead and import management packs, add from disk, and bring it in again. Now notice it auto-incremented the version, so that's very important. Even though an unsealed pack, you can bring in changes without incrementing the version. It's always a best practice to do that. Sometimes SCOM gets a little stuck if you don't increment the version, so I definitely recommend that. I'm going to go ahead and install this updated management pack, and we're good. So within a few minutes, when I go back to my discovered inventory, I should see that that management pack, these objects start to have state because they're going to start rolling up the fact that I did that service. Okay, so picking up speed, I'm done with my service monitor. So the next thing I might want to do is like an alert generating rule. So in this case, I'm going to create a add new folder. And so you'll see that the more you do this, the more repeatable it is. You'll build some muscle memory and it'll just get easier and easier. I'm going to add an existing item. I'm going to go for generic rule and alert generating event log. This looks good. So I have like a repeated event log or SNMP trap based stuff. So some of these things that are kind of hard to write, I use tools like MP Author to go actually write them the first time. Because writing them in Visual Studio would be difficult. I use a really powerful tool like we used to have in the R2 authoring console for 2007, and now I primarily use MP Author to kind of create these, and then I can turn those into fragments if I want to repeat them on a regular basis. So I'll do the event log fragment. I'll rename this to fab alert on print event rule. And here I've got my XML, and I'm just going to kind of continue that same path that we've been doing. I'll replace company ID, and it's all in my cache here. So my company ID is fab. Then I've got app name. Let's replace that with print app. And I've got event ID. So I'm just going to use a dummy event ID. I'll just say event ID 105. And for the event source, I'll just call this test for the purposes of the demo. And then the class ID, I'm going to target this rule to. So I'm just going to go grab that, my fab print app class, and replace all. And the event log name. So that's my last thing I need to know to create this rule. And we'll just do the application event log, but you can put in any event log you want. And you can see it's highlighting it as I'm finding it and doing the replacement. Okay. And that's it. So we've created that event log rule. And let's just kind of review. There's our event log rule, the application log, the event ID, the publisher name or the event source. I'm going to generate an alert. If I wanted to tweak priority and severity and things like that, I could do that here. And it updated my display strings as well. So I'm going to go ahead and save that and build it. And build one succeeded, so we're good. Let's go ahead and close that. And before we go do another import, let's just continue on. Another one I wanted to show was a performance rule. So I'm going to go add existing item. And in my library, I'm going to go down to rules, and I have a performance collection from Perfmon. I also have one from a PowerShell script that I created with MP Author in a previous demo that I did for one of these MP universities. So I actually created a fragment around that. But here's the one for Perfmon. So I'll throw that into Visual Studio, and we're going to rename this to fab print app collect print jobs rule. There we go. And that opens up, and I can see I need my company ID, app name, counter name, class ID, object name, typical things I would expect from perfmon. So I'll run through this real quick. I'll replace my company ID with fab. I'll replace the app name with my print app, my counter name. So I need to pick what do I want to actually collect here. So I'll go into perfmon, and I will look up what kind of what I have for printing. So I have an object called print queue. And here's a counter called jobs and an instance for underscore total. So this looks pretty good. I'll use this as an example for my management pack. So the counter name is going to be jobs. We'll replace that. Now, counter name without spaces, that basic, some counters have spaces and the XML doesn't handle that very well. So I just created another flag that you could just remove that, remove any spaces. But since I don't have spaces, I'm just going to replace it with jobs. Here's my class ID, and that's my print app class. So I'm just going and getting these all from the cache since I've already used them all. And most of the time, that's the way it's going to work. It's going to be very repeatable. So object name, I'm going to replace that. My object name was print queue. And lastly, I have instance name, and I'm going to replace that with underscore total. And I'm done. So that's a perf collection rule. Very, very fast. Find and replace. Let's take a look at what we created. So here's my rule ID, counter name, object name, instance name, how often I want to collect it. So I can tweak these right now. So I can say, hey, let's collect this every 30 seconds. Not recommended in a production environment, right? I'm just kind of updating that. And I can make any other changes for, you know, if I only want to write to the data warehouse and I don't want to write to the OpsDB, because maybe this is reporting only, I can get rid of that top right action. So there's a lot of things we can do really quickly here. So I'm pretty happy with this. I'm going to go ahead and save it, and let's do a build. And this build's actually going to fail, and I'll explain why. So it is telling me he can't resolve the perf identifier because I don't have a reference to the performance library, and that's required to collect performance. So in the top of every fragment, I list what is required as far as a reference goes, and if I don't have it, I need to add it. And so if I expand references here, I can see that I am missing the system performance library, and I'm missing the data warehouse library. So I just want to do an example of how to add a reference, and I'm going to browse to where Visual Studio authoring extensions. They actually include all the references for all the different versions of SCOM. And I know I need the system.performance library. So I'll grab that. And I need to do a reference as well for the data warehouse library. So I'll do the same thing. References, 2012 R2, and data warehouse library. And I'll double check that the names look good, and they do. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a save and build the solution again this time. And we're successful. All right, so I'm going to kick back over, and I'm going to import the management pack. And notice it's incrementing as we go. Every time we do a build, it increments by 1. All right, and back over to monitoring. And what you'll notice is when I get back over to my discovered inventory, you'll see that it now has state, and that's simply because of the service monitors there. So if I look, one of my servers is already critical in my print app class. I can open up Health Explorer, and I can see, yep, my monitor is absolutely already working. It can see that, you know, this is not running. We found it not running on one of the servers that we discovered the app for. Okay. So I want to go through a couple more examples of what we can do here. Another example is I can do views. So I've actually created a fragment, so I'm just going to add a folder. We'll just call this views. And within the folder, we'll do an existing item and generic folder state alert and perf views. So you can build, like, if you do a very standard thing every time you discover an application for a customer internally, you can pre-build these types of views or dashboards that you would want to use on a regular basis. So I've created a fragment for that, and I'll just call this print app views, and here we are. So same kind of things, company ID. Now you can see company ID, that'd be a waste of time. You could totally update all your fragments to already have your company ID, and you could remove this step. So then I'll do app name, which is our print app, and then lastly class ID. That's all I need. And with the class ID, replace all. So I literally just created an alert view, a perf view, a state view, and a folder, all just by doing those 3 find and replaces. So I'm going to save that, go ahead and build it. And here we are, build one succeeded, kick over into administration. And let's import that management pack. Okay, and then now when I kick over into my monitoring view, once this pack gets imported and deployed, we'll be able to see those views, and they're automatically going to go ahead and show me the state of all my discovered applications and all the monitoring that I've already done. And now that performance collection rule we just wrote, so here it is, my fab print app folder. So it just, the find and replace, put all the nice names in there, and I've got alert, performance, and state. So if I go look at state, I can see, yep, here's all my discovered print apps. If I go look at alerts, it's scoped to my class, so I can see, oh, yep, here's the alerts that we've already generated. And then soon, if I go look at performance, oh, we've already got the performance data. So I can see that I've got performance data associated with this, and I can start. Let me look at one that maybe has some. Yeah. So select time range. Let's set this to 1 hour, and I've already got 4 or 5 samples that have been collected from that performance data. So I've got 6 jobs sitting in the queue on this server, and so that, here's an example of all this management pack stuff just working out of the box really fast. All right, let's see, what other good examples are? Oh, groups. I really wanted to show that because that's a lot of work a lot of times, and I want to show how easy it is to add that here. So I'm going to create, add a new folder. And we'll just call this one groups. And let's add an existing item. And I've actually created a fragment for a couple different things. I've got a fragment for class instances, and then I've got a fragment for class instances with a dependency rollup monitor. I noticed that was a question earlier about will Visual Studio, will MP Author support, creating a dependency rollup monitor for the group. This is an example of how you could do that within the management pack. So I just added the dependency into one of the fragments, and I can pick which one I want to use. And I also have a group of the Windows computers that contain my application, which is really useful if I want to scope views or do overrides or scope notifications for an application owner, and we want to see more than just the app. So, and then I went a step further and I added a group of Windows computers and their health service watchers. That's a common thing if like application owners want notifications that their computer is down as well, and we wanted to send that to them. So that's something that's really hard to write in the UI, but if you have a fragment and you've done it once, it makes it very reusable down the road. So to start off with, I'm just going to do class instances. So this is just going to be a group of my class instances. And so I'll call this my print app group. And very simple company ID. We're going to replace that with fab. My app name, we're going to replace that with print app. And my class ID is my fab print app class. That's it. So I've just created a group. I'll go ahead and save that and we'll build it. The reason I build as I go, I want to make sure that I don't have any errors, and the build methodology will check and make sure I don't have any errors. It'll recommend. So actually I failed, and it's the same issue that I had before. I need a reference for the instance group library. So it tells me that I'm going to go ahead and browse C:, wherever Visual Studio authoring extensions references are. And this was, what was it called? System Center Instance Group Library. System Center Instance Group Library. There it is. All right. Yep, that looks good. So we'll save it and build it again, and hopefully we get 100% success. And we do. Awesome. So I want to show one other group. That was the Health Service Watcher group, because I think it's interesting to see how that works in the console. So very quickly, I will add an existing item, and I'm just going to go ahead and grab that group of Windows computers. And let's see, let's rename that to print app computers and watchers. And same thing, I've just got to do the simple find and replaces. So company ID is fab, app name is whatever I want my app name to be, which was print app in this case, and then my class ID, which we created at the very beginning. Okay, that's it. I'm done. Oh, I actually made a mistake. I left off one of the pounds, and that will mess everything up. So let's try that again. There we go. That looks better. So we can see I've got here's my group. It's got a discovery. It's got a very complex expression that normally would kind of throw people for a loop, but this makes it a whole lot easier. So I'll go ahead and save that and build it. All right. And last thing I'm going to do is go ahead and import that, and I want to demo some of the stuff that we did. Grab my MP. Yep, keeps auto-incrementing. So as long as you do your find and replace right, you're probably not going to have any mistakes in your authoring. It makes it kind of foolproof. The biggest issue is making sure you get those references, which is why I document those in the management pack in the first place. So in this case, now it's going to take a few minutes to populate those groups and for them to show up and actually run. But essentially, what's going to happen is I'm gonna get a list of groups. It'll probably take a few minutes. Oh, nope, here they are. So here's my fab print app instances group and my computer and health service watcher group. I doubt they're populated, but let's go ahead and see. Yeah, so this usually takes about 5 minutes for the members of the groups to actually start to show up here. But essentially, this group will contain instances of the app. So this is great for scoping for application owners so they can just see things related to the app, or if I want to give them a bigger view, I have the computer and health service watchers that contain that app. And so, yeah, so that'll take about 5 minutes for those to actually show up and then be usable. So within this, I can do I can start to create views. So if I wanted to create like a new view in the console, and I can go do this in using my fragments as well, but maybe I want to do a hybrid kind of design. I can say, let's do a new view within the management pack, and we'll call this print app computers. And I'll choose like the Windows computer object. But I want to scope this only to those computers that contain my application. Well, we've already got that group. So if I just say scope it to this computer and health service watchers and hit OK, once the group membership is actually populated, this view will show me Windows computers that contain my app. So I can get more than just the information around the app itself. I can look at, I can expose to the end user everything about their computers that contain that application. Yep, and we've already got some. So I can see that, I've got these servers, and I'm seeing health state that's not necessarily related to the app. It could be anything that's on the computer itself. So the only other thing I wanted to show is I also created in this library an empty fragment, and this is to help you build your own fragments if you want to start playing with this and using it. So essentially, every management pack fragment starts with management pack fragment and close management pack fragment. You can look at my other ones to get an idea, and then I gave an example of my comment section. So with just some ideas of what you would want to add and replace into these as you build your own fragments or tweak them. So know that that's there, that's available for you to leverage as well. So I think we met the goals. We discovered the print app, we monitored the service, events, we collected performance data, we did views and groups. So all of that in about 40 minutes. And so you can see that's really fast, and that's with me explaining it. If I'm just creating this for a new application, you can do all of that in about 15 to 20 minutes. It's really, really fast, especially if you get good at find and replace. So these are the resources for you guys to go get what you'll need to actually go through this. The Visual Studio authoring extensions have been updated for SCOM 2016. You can go use those with any version of SCOM, so always use the latest one. My fragment library is available at this URL. You can download it, and it's version 1.3 today, but I'm constantly updating it based on feedback. So if you have any feedback, please send it to me, either bugs you find or requests for something new that's not there. And then I have a step-by-step series that kind of walks through what I demonstrated today. So if you get stuck or need some help, or you don't remember everything you saw, you can go to that blog post and look through this multi-step series that kind of walks through building a management pack this way.
Kevin, that was awesome. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Have you got some time to go through some of the questions?
Sure.
Okay. So what I'll do, I don't know if you see them or you want to bring them up so you can read them firsthand, or I can read some of these out to you.
Oh boy, there's a lot of questions there. Let's see.
Yeah, scroll down to around the 11 o'clock time frame.
All right. Oh, yeah.
The first one I see, Jeremy Warren had asked about how these fragments get created. So Jeremy, I don't know if you just noticed that, but Kevin did share up on his screen a library where you can get some of these fragments.
Yep, and an example fragment template that I included as well so that you can create your own. I built almost all of these using MP-Author. I really like MP-Author. It's a really great tool for creating repeatable monitoring. So I kind of use a mix between fragments and MP-Author when I'm doing workflows. But a lot of times I want to write something that I don't have a fragment for, and then I immediately just go straight into MP-Author. If I think it's something I'll reuse on a regular basis, I might create a fragment in that case. Because another thing, I didn't talk about it, but there's something called Snippet Templates in Visual Studio, and that you can take fragments and turn them into a snippet template. And I have a blog post on snippets. That's probably a session in itself, but essentially that's kind of a way to create like an input file, like through a CSV, and create hundreds or even thousands of workflows. So if you were contracted to do a huge management pack with lots of performance collection or event alerts, something that's very repeatable, you can take a fragment, turn it into a snippet template, and then create lots and lots of monitoring really fast. Okay, so I'm going to go through some of these. Jeremy Simpson, I have a ton of services I need to monitor. Can I copy that monitor and change the service name? Absolutely. So you could fill out everything and then save that and then just reuse that fragment over and over and over again. So like I said, customize these fragments. Go ahead and put in the company name, and if you were going to create one for an application class, you have a choice. Either create that snippet template and learn how that works, or just reuse the fragment over and over again, but just pre-fill out stuff so you don't have to find and replace all the time. An example of how to handle inconsistent service names. Yeah, so I actually have a blog post on that. It's probably deeper than what I could explain here, but if you have inconsistent service names, so for instance, there's some applications that put the computer name in the service name. So the service name is not the same across every system. I actually have a blog post that shows how to do that, where we discover it, and it lets you use kind of like a wildcard in the service name. And what you could do is you could literally take that blog post and that management pack. I had an example management pack you can go download, and then just turn that into a fragment. And so now you've added that to your library. You have a inconsistent service name monitoring fragment. Do you have examples of things that can't be done in MP-Author but are doable in VSAE? So probably the most common scenario for that would be if you needed really complex what we call composite data sources. That's something that we used to do really well in the SCOM 2007 R2 authoring console, and we also do it fairly well in Visual Studio. It's very different, and it's not a visual method, so you do have to know a lot more about the XML. So composite data sources are something that they're really hard to do through wizard-based tools, because they're generally highly customized. So that would be an example of something that you can't really do. But I will say this, if you walk through the wizards in MP-Author, they create composite data sources behind the scenes. So for instance, if you did like a PowerShell script performance collection rule in MP-Author, and then you go look at the XML, it's creating some of these very advanced scenarios. It's just very templatized, the same way a fragment would be. So when you have a tool that's based on wizards, you're limited by the wizards. If you have a tool that's based on fragments, you're limited by your fragment library. So there are times that I actually go back to the 2007 authoring console and author with that if I have to do something incredibly complex. So I hope that answers that. Record, let's see, updated VSAE. Yeah, we updated it about, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, I think, or maybe a month ago, and I have a blog post on it. But basically, the link here will always take you to the latest version, no matter what. Can you import the MP from Visual Studio? Yes, absolutely. So I could have configured via Visual Studio and VSAE to every time I do a build, just go ahead and deploy the MP. That's a configuration setting. I was just demonstrating manually doing it. And then, are there issues using Silec Network Management Library in VSAE? I doubt it. I don't think there shouldn't, as long, you can use any library in VSAE. You would just have to have a reference for it. So I don't know that there. Oh, I see. That's already been answered anyway. Are there Apm monitoring fragments for that? I don't have any for Apm. I've never been asked that before. That's interesting. So the answer is no. But if there's something that you do that's very repeatable that you think a fragment would be really valuable for, just let me know via email or reach out to me through my blog, and I can look. Do I still have time to continue answering
Yeah, by all
questions?
means, keep going, and what we'll do is we'll move the next session. We'll just slide it into the break a little bit.
Okay. Let's see. Are modern tile view fragments on the horizon? I have not played with those. I mean, I created those using the UI. I've never created those in XML. So I think that if we finally standardize and stabilize and stop changing the way that we do tile views and dashboards and things like that, I would invest in a fragment library for that. But I would certainly want to see their use cases take off, and before I would do that type of investment. It's very easy to use the UI to create those though, so that's how I usually do it. VB script-based discovery, I think I have one. I just haven't published it yet, Michael. I have a PowerShell-based discovery and a VB script-based discovery that uses something called create class instance. And I've written both of those now. I actually worked with Tim McFadden on one because he had a need for it, and I think he actually may have written it and given it to me. So, so those will be in the next version of the fragment library. One of the biggest barriers to VSAE is most instruction blog posts assume familiarity, which I find confusing. Yeah, I totally agree, Stephen, that a beginner course in Visual Studio is very helpful. I do not come from a development background. Learning XML was something brand new to me when I joined Microsoft, and XML is not really a development language. So Visual Studio is very awkward and confusing to me as well. I had to kind of learn the quirks of it, and that's kind of why I built the fragment methodology, because you cannot know anything about XML or Visual Studio, and if you can find and replace, you can use this tool. So, is there an empty fragment class? Yeah, I think we covered that. Can you please share the URLs? Got that on the screen. Are management packs compatible between 2012 and SCOM 2016? Yes. There's no schema change between 2012 and 2016, so every MP that works in 2012 works in 2016. There's nothing, that would require 2016 only. That I know that we made some changes in the Unix Linux side. So on the Unix Linux side, there definitely are MPs that will only import into SCOM 2016 that will not work because we made some underlying changes to the agent. But overall, backwards compatibility fully exists. And can you automate it? Yeah, so certainly you could take these fragments. You don't even have to use Visual Studio, right? You could take these fragments and you could write a script that does the find and replace and prompts you for the data and goes across a whole, but you could put like 10 of them in a directory, and you could, if you can write the script to do the find and replace, you can totally build a management pack way faster than what I just did, in fact. A snippet in MP author. That'd be an MP author question. More useful fragments. How to build the fragment from scratch. I probably need to do that. So there was a request for me to build a fragment from scratch. So, and I was thinking if I had enough time in the session, which I did not, I might go to MP author, create a rule or a monitor, and show how we can build a fragment out of that. So I'll probably do a blog post on that in the future. Convert an MP automatically to fragments? No, there really isn't, because you've got to pick and choose how you want the display strings to look, and you got to think about how to be strategic in making it generic. So I don't think that would be very easy to automatically do that. After you added the view in the console, can you? No, you can't. I can bring that XML back into Visual Studio, but I can't bring it back into my project. And so it's very much a one-way direction. So if there are things that you do in the console, you will lose them if you re-import the new one from your project. So it's very important to go build views and things like that if you're going to keep it all in the project. if once I've built it, I don't care about that project anymore, then I can absolutely use Visual Studio and bring in a management pack that's existing and continue to add more fragments to it. So kind of yes and no to answer to that. There's no PowerShell script, two-state monitor in SCOM, only VB script. Do you have a fragment for it? I don't remember. I will say this. There is an example of a PowerShell script monitor that's been written. It's an add-on that you can bring into SCOM and you can use it in the UI. So there's a blog post in a series of how to do that. So that is possible. And in monitor, yep, here's my time script PowerShell and VB script fragment. So I have both of those available as a fragment. And then Visual Studio Community Edition and higher. I really don't know much about the Visual Studio editions. I always wanted to find like a free version of Visual Studio and demonstrate that, and I haven't been successful at that yet. Because I know that Community Edition, there are some editions that are free, but they're very specific about what you use it for. And it gets into a gray area on licensing, and I just decided not to touch that. So I'm probably not an expert enough on licensing to know how to do that. I've seen people in the past talk about how to strip down and use a free version of Visual Studio to be able to use VSAE. I don't know what the licensing implications are of that. So I would say I don't know. And I think that's it as far as questions go.
Kevin, that was awesome. Really appreciate your making yourself available for all these questions afterwards. I know the community really appreciates that, as do we. And again, these questions, we'll circulate the responses afterwards as well. And on behalf of all the attendees and SILAC, Kevin, thank you once again.
You bet.
Just a caution when exiting, you know the drill.